On the flight deck, crews are now manning for the next launch. It's time to clear the flight deck and catwalks. Stand well clear of all jet blasts, prop arcs, and exhaust. It's time to start up the GO aircraft. Let's start them up.
All right, welcome to the F-14 Tomcast. I'm Craig Snyder, call sign Crunch, and I was an F-14 pilot and Top Gun instructor, and I'm one of your two hosts here on the F-14 Tomcast. Today's episode, we're covering Operation Iraqi Freedom, coalition combat operations in Iraq starting in 2003.
And I'm Dave Baranek, call sign Bio. I was an F-14 RIO and Top Gun instructor, and I'm your other host for the F-14 Tomcast. You know, similar to our last episode, today we're talking about fairly recent history. Our guests are former F-14 RIO Doug Denneny, call sign Boog, and former F-14 pilot Keith Kimberly, call sign Grumpy. They flew combat missions in Iraq with VF2. Gentlemen, welcome to the F-14 Tomcast.
Crunch Bio, thanks for having us aboard today. It's been quite the pleasure, and I've really enjoyed the episodes up to today, and it's been great. It's good to see old friends and hear about things you didn't know about and get a lot more on the F-14 than I ever knew before. So it's been great.
Same here. It's great. Thanks for inviting us, and I can't wait to talk with Grump, too, and talk with you guys and talk to everybody out there and tell some stories.
Yeah, we're looking forward to hearing this. So, Grumpy, let's start with you. The standard question we ask all of our guests: where are you from? How'd you get into naval aviation, and how'd you get into Tomcats?
Well, if I go back to flying, my dad decided he'd spend a little money when I was 10 years old and got to go in a Cessna 150 and sat out on about a 5-inch phone book and got my first lesson in flying. And then he took me around to a lot of the air shows, and it was great to see. And then I just kind of flew civilian stuff on and off for a period of time. And as I was in college, I was blowing my mom and dad's money right and left on flying lessons. But at the time, I went to Iowa State University to pursue some athletic activities. And shortly after being there, I realized that professional sports was probably not in my future. So thought I'd try to find something else out. And I figured, well, flying's a great way to go through. So I went down and talked to the Navy and joined the ROTC unit, and then got commissioned. And I was in that time frame where they were taking everybody, because I certainly wouldn't got have accepted today when it comes
what
to
year?
flying.
What year did you get commissioned?
I was an '89 graduate, and then got picked up for aviation just prior to, so that was really nice. And then I went down, did the standard training down in Pensacola, went through Whiting Field, and was fortunate enough to get selected to go to Jets, and kind of followed Jungle Jones from there. Went to Beeville, Texas, and went through VT 26 and 24, and there's some great guys in all those squadron COs and everything else. And then I was just fortunate enough to get selected West Coast Tomcats, which is kind of what I wanted. If nothing else, kind of for the Top Gun movie. Sounds like San Diego's a great place, so got to go there. So, anyways, graduation in March of '91. There's this little gentleman in the corner. He's kind of got gloves on. His hands look kind of tattered a little bit. His name is Smiling Jack Fetterman, and he says he's Air Pac at the time, and says, "Hey, I got this great thing in San Diego called Boost, the Broad and Opportunity Officer Selection Program for our enlisted people trying to become officers, and I want you to go down there and be my first company officer." Well, there was a 10-month delay from when I got my wings to when class would start, so it kind of fit in. And then I, after doing that for a period of time, went over to 124, and just like you heard from Jungle, myself and my class, there was an initial cadre of 10 pilots and 10 RIOs that went through the first 2 D classes that were catching up with VF 11 and 31 as they transitioned to the D, and they came from the East Coast on the Forrestal, and then came over to the West Coast to be on the Carl Vinson. Anyways, so I was fortunate enough to be in that first cadre. I was in that second class, and just like Jungle said, my class sat in the simulators for probably 2 or 3 months, 6 hours a day, at least playing video games every single day. What what could be worse for a 23-year-old snot-nosed kid than playing computer games? It was the greatest, thing ever. And so we learned quite a bit about the plane, and then went through the RAG. Got through that at the end of 92, joined 11, and then went through deployment, workup and deployments just with Jungle down there. Jumbie Castleton, which you guys had on the last episode, was on that first deployment. And let me tell you, it was really nice to fly with somebody like Jumbie, because he could always take you down a few notches to make you feel comfortable, which, at night on a bad weather day when you're coming aboard the boat, there's nothing better than to have a guy in the back seat, reaching around the corner saying, "Hey, you want a little Scooby snack?" Or, "How you doing back there? You're the best ever," kind of pump you up trying to get aboard, because, oh, by the way, they want to get aboard and have some dinner too. So anyways, towards the end of my VF-11 tour, they had this new program out that nobody knew anything about, and it was called SFTI. And my CAG Fitzgerald, Lobster Fitzgerald, amazing pilot on top of being a great leader. He gave me an endorsement, said this would be something good to do. It sounded great. So I went to that first October 95 SFTI class. And now there was a power projection class just in front of us that came out as SFTIs. The students did. All the instructors were obviously SFTIs. But Chaser Keithley, O.B. O'Brien, Mac McMullen, and Lurch Thomas had gone through the course, and they came out as SFTIs. But mine was the first official SFTI class in October of 95. So got through that, and then I went and just went downstairs to the basement of the Top Gun building there in Miramar, and I joined Tomcat Strike Fighter Weapons School Pacific, where there was just amazing people. This is where, the beginning, like it was before, but now we're really talking about talented people. Chaser Keithley, O.B. O'Brien, Keith Taylor, Liz Taylor, Opie Taylor, Mac McMullen, and of course, we got Slammer Richardson that is running the show. So, you have probably the quintessential leader who not only can talk the talk, but can walk the walk. So I couldn't be any more privileged to be with those guys. And when you look around the room and you know that you're probably the dumbest guy there, you really try to turn up your game to try to meet, just a little bit of the talent that you have around you. So that disestablishes, unfortunately, with BRAC. We all ended up going to Miramar, where I joined Slot Slant, Strike Weapons and Tactics School Atlantic. I think you heard PK Averna talk a little bit about that. When I got there, it had kind of started transitioning about a year prior from an A6 weapons school to more now an F-14 weapons school, as the A6 went away. And now I go from Slammer Richardson to Lung Aquilino, who's in charge. So you go from fantastic and amazing to fantastic and amazing. And, we pick up guys along the way, Gordo McDonald, Sparky Protzman, Troll Patterson, PK is there, Bluto Saporito that you heard talk about the missile shoot there on the shot with Jumbie the other day. And they were just an amazing group of people assembled there, and really got to do a lot of stuff, which I think we can touch on here and there, what the weapons school was able to do. And then from there, I went to VF2 on my first stint as a training officer. Another great group of people, COs like Toole Parrish and Stewie Stewart and Booger Berriger, those kinds of guys that I had kind of in the beginning. I just missed Little Mac as a CO at that time, which was unfortunate. But so I did that tour, and then I went over to 101 as an instructor for about a year and a half at 101. Then I came right back to VF2 as a department head. And then towards the end of the VF2 tour, I was lucky, and can't underscore it enough how lucky I was for Boog to take me over to Lemoore to do the transition from the F-14D to the Super Hornet, because he certainly didn't have to take me over there for the total of 3 months, that was nice to get the ticket punch. But I can tell you there was some extremely talented people that were every bit as deserving. So from there, I was fortunate enough to then go to the War College and grow my hair long, talk bad about my country, and work half the time. So that was fun at the War College. It was a good way to decompress, and you're sitting in there and you're like, I'm never going to use any of this stuff. None of it. I'm not going to write papers. I'm not going to do speeches. I could care less about joint. I'm a Tomcat guy. I like to fly airplanes, and that's all I'm going to do the rest of my life. So, of course, I thought that too when I went to Miramar, and I wanted to be a 126 Bandit driver the rest of my life. But anyways, didn't get to do that. So after the year there, I went down to Airlant, and I worked for Long Aquilino again. So I did F-14 and F-18 EF readiness and helped out with the flying hour program, and then transitioned the Navy from TSPAT to what you now know is the Master Air Plan, the MAP, which was kind of fun to kind of get on the ground level of that. And then I was fortunate enough to get selected for command, and I did a short stint, almost 2 years at VMFAT 101 as the XO there. Another fantastic opportunity. And there was a Marine Corps lieutenant colonel, became a colonel, Crusoe, was a Top Gun instructor. Absolutely amazing leader. I wish he had continued in his career. He had other things that he wanted to do, but what an amazing leader he was. And then from there, I went to 147, did the XOCO tour there, transitioned to from the Charlies, from Lot 11 Charlies to Lot 26 Super Hornets. We were supposed to get Lot 31s, but anyways, a panel went bad, so we got Lot 26, which wasn't too bad. Did a little bit of work there, and then once again, just in the right place at the right time, CNO needs a guy to go to England and be his liaison between CNO and First Sea Lord. Probably
Damn,
the best title I've ever heard in my life. First Sea
Wow.
Lord. So I got to work directly with
Not
First
the
Sea
second,
Lord.
just the first.
Yeah, just exactly. So anyways, I got to work on their floor plate. They're called the MOD. That's their Pentagon in downtown London. And I was there for 4 years. And what a great tour that was, an eye-opening. So remember what I did at War College was I will never write history papers or papers. I'll never write speeches. I'll never do the joint thing. Well, second week I was in England. I was writing the speech for the Assistant Chief of the Naval Staff. He was going to the Royal Air Force and speaking. And I'm like, you're kidding me. You want me to write you a speech? Anyway, so it just snowballed from there. And I was in crazy places doing crazy things, sitting down with the Secretary of State for Defense in a room by myself talking U.S. issues. And I'm like, I don't really need to be here. But anyways, from there, I'm going to finish it all off with a tour, and not a very well-known tour and not a very well-appreciated tour, but probably one of the best tours I ever had. I got to be the Chief of Staff of Carrier Strike Group 8. And that was an absolutely amazing tour, probably more for the guys that I worked for than the job in and of itself, because they allowed me to do a lot of the things that, you normally don't do. They kind of treated it like a COXO thing. And I worked for Mike Gilday, who's the current CNO of the Navy. So I worked for him. He was my first, and then Pops Batchelder was the next one. And then Woody Horan, I finished it off with Woody Horan, who I worked for at VF2. He was the officer, and I was a training officer. So it was just a full circle thing. And that was the end of it. So it was an amazing ride.
How many years?
Probably more so for the people than anything else.
And how many years was that?
I did 28 years and 2,500 hours in the Tomcat, just under 2,500 in the Hornet, and 1,200 traps.
Amazing.
Pretty spectacular.
Yes.
It is. It is.
Well, Boog,
Yeah.
tell us about where you're from. Grumpy, that was an awesome collection. Wow.
I'm more than happy to go. I'll do. You want me to do a grumpy like, or do you want me just to break it up into chunks? What's best for you?
Whatever works for you.
Okay, I'm gonna work grumpy into mine as well, like he worked into. So I grew up in Arizona, and I was one of these guys when I was 15. I was going to Luke and Willie air shows, and I literally said, I'm not going to sit behind a desk. I'm going to do that. So I wanted to be a fighter pilot, and I applied to the Air Force Academy, Naval Academy, and at the time my eyes were perfect. And I said, if for some reason my eyes go bad, I knew what I thought my perception as a 16, 17-year-old was, maybe Navy would be better if something were to happen. Because if I can't fly medically, maybe I'll try that submarine thing or the surface ship. So anyway, went to the Naval Academy. Absolutely hated it. I mean, loved it while I was there. Worked hardest 4 years of my life. I was one of those guys that made the top half because I was on the bottom half and made them the top half academically. And just busted my ass. And when I got out, it's interesting. The pilot positions go back then all the way to the end of the class, but the NFO ones run out. And I was like worried. So I was like, okay, eyes go bad, can't be a pilot. Now I'm like sweating because I was an aero major, and I'm sweating the selection. And it came down and fortunately got, I'll be blunt, one of the last NFO positions. And I said to myself, you know what? I want to fly fighters. I'm going to fly fighters. So, I went hardcore down in Pensacola and did really well. What happened with NFOs was they did a quality spread. Pilots is different. You had to have jet grades, right? If you didn't have jet grades, you weren't going to go jets. NFOs, they were doing this quality spread where they're taking the top guys in the class, the middle guys, and the bottom guys. And the guys who were at the bottom that got fighters, they showed up at like VF 101. A lot of them didn't make it through. I mean, literally, I could tell you several didn't make it through. Went well. I was a top guy out of VF 101. Got to go right to see VF 14. So the joy of being the top guy was you go. And as the youngest aviator in the air wing, did some Libya stuff. This is 86. So I graduated from Naval Academy in 84. August of 86 deployed. America dropped bombs. We did not. But it was, your first cruise kind of keeps you in the Navy, I would say. And it was just a wonderful med cruise. We got to be tactical, got to do some stuff, and really flew a lot. So loved it. Workups next time. We were actually on the second cruise, another hot Libya event. We were the sister squadron. I was in VF-14, the top headers. Our sister squadron, VF-32, shot down the MiGs. So came out of my fleet squadron, did well, gave me two options. Hey, do you want to stick East Coast or VF-124, which is going to be getting, 350 F-14Ds? Grumpy, what was the number?
Yeah, it was well north of that when back in 88, 89, it was 460 some they were going to build.
Yeah. So I'm like, holy smokes. I grew up, like I said, grew up in Arizona, loved my community on the East Coast. There was two communities there really was. There was an East Coast and West Coast fighter community. And a lot of people told me, you're going to get lost out there, man. You're not from that. Total BS. Great transition. Brag instructor. So I'm at VF 124, show up there in August of 89, spend 3 years there and met wonderful guys coming through like Grumpy. So everybody, the great thing about being a RAG instructor is you got to know everybody in that community that came through over the course of 3 years. And I'll feed in those D students. So yes, I was one of the initial cadre instructors. These guys were superstars coming out of VT. They were the top guys. There was a multiple number, and I don't remember. I won't embarrass Grumpy with his, but I want to say I think he had like a 220 or higher to get F-14D pilot. I'm not sure what the RIO number was. Does that sound about right, Grumpy?
Yeah, I mean the top one was Lurch Thomas with 276.
Yeah,
he had been the number one guy out of the training command in the last 20 years or something like that.
Yeah. So the cool thing about this is that I mentioned the quality spread happens in certain areas. I mentioned it very first F-14, NFO type stuff coming out of the training command. But somebody decided for the D, they were only going to put the best initial cadre of JOs, meaning guys like Grumpy and Lurch and other guys like that. So these guys show up. They've been studying hard. We're kind of moving from, we're flying in A's, we're flying in D's, never make excuses, but their systems knowledge was awesome. So whenever you got a D flight with a student, like with Grumpy or with Lurch or Jungle or guys like that, it was great. It was almost like flying with a fleet guy. It's incredible knowledge. So loved it. Had a great 3 years there. Made lifelong friends. Got orders Super JO tour. While I was at the RAG, I went through Top Gun. So I didn't really want to do the air show thing, but it was offered. Hey, we got two open. So I was one of the first guys to take. Well, it was myself and Thumper Bonner, and it was Rhett and Gabby. We took a section of F-14Ds through Top Gun, first time ever. Did not have tape D01, so not a smoking machine. Had some limitations with the systems, but it was an awesome airplane. So we took that through Tomcat Ds through Top Gun, the power projection course, as Grumpy mentioned earlier. We did that in June of 91. So long story short, went back to an A squadron. VF-213 needed me as a Super JO. Wonderful people over there. Did that Super JO tour. And then I came, then I was asked to come back to Top Gun as instructor. I was a Top Gun instructor from 93 to 95. Phenomenal. We won't talk about it. We're going to talk about OIF. From there, 213 had a series of mishaps while I was there. And they wanted to really, this is when hey, let's bring in great folks. So once again, wonderful people there, great maintenance master chief, Keith Holbert, great skipper, XO. I was department head, went through 2 years as a department head of VF-213. During that tour, we transitioned to Oceana. So that was a time frame there. That was 95 to 97. So 97, I've been in the cockpit at this time for 13 years nonstop, bunch of hours, bunch of experience. And of course, the Navy said, we're going to joint you and anoint you. So sent me off to the Pentagon, J39. I was an action officer doing special technical operations. And then coming out of that, I screened for command while I was there. But the problem is there's particularly too many RIOs to cram into half the squadrons that were there when we started this JO. So they basically said, you're done with your joint tour. We want to get you kicked out of there at 22 months. So we can put another body in to joint that person. So find something else. So I became a legislative fellow for Senator John McCain, which was a pretty magical year on Capitol Hill. And then out of that, I still had more time. And they slated me to VF2, which was phenomenal. Couldn't wait to be a bullet. Still had to kill more time, so they made me chief staff officer of fighter wing, and that's where I met back up with VF2. So Booger Berriger is the skipper. Slim Whitson's the XO of VF2. Booger and I were friends. Slim and I were friends. These are all our friends. I knew all the department heads. I knew Grumpy, and so Booger was. I just checked in as CSO, and I'd done like a Cat 4 syllabus in the D because I'd already had probably 400 or 500, 600 hours in the airplane. So my first flight in the D, I'll double check the logbook, but I think it was with Grumpy in VF2. And the funny story is so I have not flown in the backseat of an airplane in 3 years, probably whatnot. And they somehow, how it works with Cat 4 syllabus. It's like, hey, your first D hop, my first D hop was with Grumpy. And I still remember it because it was in a VF2 bird. And we're at the hold short. And Grumpy goes, all right, I'm all set. You ready to go? And I go, I hit, instead of the left ICS, I'll hit the right UHF pedal and go, I'm ready if you are. And that's a block on the hit board. And long story short, I was well behind the airplane. But and so I'll stop it there, except a wonderful tour up to, being, took over as XO of VF2. And during 99% of OIF, I was the XO. It's a long story, but the way fit rep cycles work, CAG wasn't going to go anywhere until OIF was done. Slim had to wait for his ticket. So it was interesting. I took over command of the squadron. It was I had over 20 years in the Navy, and I had done.
And you were just taking command at 20 years. Wow.
Yeah.
So to set the stage, so Slim's the CEO. What's that? Yeah. Say again?
Let me get the date right. I took over in April of 2003. No, it was 19 years. 19 years, and it was 19 years.
Man, that is unusual.
That is for the audience. That is incredibly long in the tooth.
I screened for command at year 13, and I waited 6 years to take over, and I did nothing wrong. You know what I mean? It wasn't meant down a day.
How do you know?
Yeah.
All right. So set the stage here. So Slim's the CO. You're the XO. The year now is what, 2003? Is that right?
We'll take it right up to 2002, which is when we go on deployment. How's that?
So
does that sound like a good start?
Yeah, I think starting kind of in the 2002 buildup to OIF. Okay. I think it's important kind of backdrop.
All right. So when did you guys go on deployment? What month and year?
Go ahead, Grump. I've talked a lot.
No, go ahead.
It should have been team sport. September. I'm going to say September of 2002.
Yeah, it was an 8-month deployment, and we were supposed to relieve Lincoln in the NAG.
Okay, so September 2002, you guys are going on deployment, 8-month deployment. Boog, you're the XO. Grumpy, you're OPSO?
I'm OPSO, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. And so, okay, great question then. So you're the OPSO leading into this. Obviously, so while this is in 2002, OEF is going down, right? We know that's happening. And are you guys expecting to partake in that? What are you training for? What are you building up to during the workup cycle leading up to that deployment?
So we're leading up the deployment to be Operation Southern Watch, maybe heavy, in that there's a little bit of activity. You know, you've had Desert Fox that has gone on in the late 90s and in 99. And then, you know, there's September 11th that happens. And then, you know, 2002, there's a little bit of, we don't like Iraq because they're not letting us in to do the, to look for a nuclear weapon or nuclear material, whatever, to make nuclear weapons. So there's a little bit of that going on. So that there's a bit of a buildup in the background. So we're you know, thinking that we're going to do something, but we're just not quite sure what it's going to be. You know, and when we go to Fallon, we have tape D03B, which, you know, it has significant capability. We have
did that add? That was a GPS upgrade, if I remember. That was like JDAM or something, wasn't it?
No, D04 is going to be JDAM that we're going to get while we're on deployment. But we go to Fallon with D03B, and if you, like you guys would know, usually when you go to Fallon, when you leave Fallon, they don't want to change anything because they want you to go into combat with what you know, what you've trained to. So that kind of sets the table a little bit for what we're going to end up doing in OIF. But in Fallon, we go with tape D03 Bravo, and it has some nice enhancements in the radar and the software and air-to-ground weapons. And we're, you know, we have Lantern. We're able to drop. But Boog, I don't think we have PTID in the back of the D, do we, for that cruise?
We did. Yeah. So Grump, good point. And so I'll throw one thing out to Grumpy and the SWAT slant guys in the mock. So when I was doing all that short tour stuff, those guys were fighting hard for capability for the F-14D. So that's I'll just lead with that there is. So the mindset is, as we all know, the F-14 is going to go away sometime soon, later. We don't know. Of course, it's 06 is when it goes away. But what's happened is the parts consolidation is happening because of the smaller numbers, and the PMA, you know, did some pretty good work and we were still getting investment and capability, but it was fighting for nickels. And so what would happen is guys at SWAT Slant knew that this is what we needed. And so they really, I thought, did a great job with like the top 10 lists and fought. So all that work that was being done in, you know, you mentioned Grumpy and Lung and, you know, all these guys, Tung, Peterson, brought this capability that finally arrived in our lap, like just in time. Fair enough, Grump? Is that the right way to say it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole too far, but, you know, we can. If you go back a little bit, you look at what Hey Joe Parsons and Rat Slade, Devo Dervay, and along with Snort are able to get this Lantern on the airplane, and it's kind of a prototypical thing. It's kind of off to the side, right? It's kind of on the down low. It's money that we just we're able to kind of get a little bit to the side. And this is going to be a common theme afterwards. We're going to start adding capability to the airplane for $1, and we're going to turn around and we're going to give the Navy NavAir $1.50 in return. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. That's a perfect analogy. I'm just echoing. It's just it's that airplane. Grumpy, keep going. But we'll talk about the capability that F-14D has.
So, you know, people in DC, both NavAir and up in the ready room, there you could call it N80, N88, and N98, whatever you want to call it. The guys in there, along with Hey Joe and the guys at the PMA, are able to take a look at what the airplane was supposed to have and start trying to trickle some of that with COTS, you know, for the airplane. Fast tactical imagery comes on the airplane, and you know, this enables us to send information, almost real-time BDA type of information. As an example, on the 2001 deployment, we do a 2,200 nautical mile one-way strike on the Kitty Hawk, because when the carriers are going to go relieve each other, a lot of times you try to do a sneak attack. So we found out that Kitty Hawk was doing a Steel Beach picnic as they were doing crossing the line ceremony. We're on our way down to Hong Kong, and we send 2 F-14Ds down, and Kobe Lesberg is in the lead airplane. They go over the top of the lantern. They take a picture, practice they dropping a bomb. They data link that 750 nautical miles to somebody as they fly back, and then he data links at 750 nautical miles to the ship. And 10 minutes after they overfly the carrier down 2,200 miles south, coming up through Indonesia, we send the strike group commander down there a picture of his Steel Beach picnic and us putting a bomb right through the middle of it. So talk about, talk about capability. You're able to, this FTI, you're able to take snap pictures and send it to your wingman. You can send it to a station. You can replay, you can wind back and take a look at what you just did. So if you weren't quite sure you hit something, you could actually rewind it in the airplane and play it and see if you actually hit it. And then you could send it forward. I mean, BDA was down, wherever the FTI station was, it was always on the carrier unless we were in Fallon.
So what's FTI? Oh,
fast tactical imagery is what it was called.
All right.
And it was an immense capability. And I mean,
it was basically it was a video data link.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's so we got the capability stuff. I mean, I want to get into let's keep going to OIF.
Okay.
Oh.
So anyways, as we're building up to go into OIF, we go through Fallon with tape D03 Bravo, and then in the background you have a lot of stuff going on, hinting that we're going to do something bigger than just Southern Watch. And as we start our deployment in September, in November they pass a thing at the UN that says they want to get in there, and that kind of really sets the stage for us starting to build up military power. You watch 5 Corps, 5th Army is now starting to move into Kuwait. You see the AEF is moving into Al Udeid and some of their other places, and 1 MEF or the 1st Marine Corps Division is starting to move into Kuwait also at the end of the year. And so we're definitely thinking something big is going to happen. At the same time, as we start coming in to theater to relieve Lincoln, they're going to go down to Australia, Perth, Australia, and north of there. They're going to do flight ops, and they're going to hang out there for a couple months and do Steel Beach picnic every day ashore. So, anyways, they were training while they were down there. So by this time, we're definitely getting indications this is going to be something a bit bigger. So over to you, Boog. What are you hearing at this time?
So yeah, and so September 2002, like I said, we deploy. We immediately get into OSW. I would say, so all the capability, Link 16, we talked about all that. Just an amazing package. One thing we didn't have was JDAM. So while we're doing OSW missions as a buildup, we started collectively. I was involved with this. I know Grumpy was, and many in the squadron were really pushing hard back to the fleet. Back to the shore base units, and they were saying it's coming. And my desire, of course, was that we could get a JDAM off prior to an actual combat mission. But the way things were happening with OSW, we were doing great work with tarps. We were doing great work with our lantern, but we were not actually dropping because the Air Force JFAC only wanted JDAM to be hitting these small, precise targets during OSW. And so
OSW, Operation Southern Watch, Iraqi operations, the Air Force is getting all the action because they have the capability to do GPS-guided JDAM, and we don't.
No, I'll also say F-18s were getting all the action.
So why weren't LGBs good enough?
Yeah.
Why weren't LGBs good enough?
They're not. Too many stories of people not delivering LGBs accurately enough for the very, very small, precise relay blocks.
So one thing that Slim and Boog did is while this build was happening and everybody's starting to decipher what they're going to do role-wise, he sends me into Al Udeid, and then I also go into Kuwait. And while I'm in Al Udeid, I get an opportunity to start looking at what they call the JPITL, which is the Joint Targeting List. And it is just filled top to bottom with JDAM only targets on day one. It's just JDAM. There's no LGB. There's SLAM-ER. There's JSOW. And then there's just a bunch of JDAM targets. And I'm just like, we have got to do everything we can to play in this game. And, granted that the A and the B can do JDAM, the D cannot. And we make up about 15% of the entire naval, force that's going feet dry. So it's a smaller portion, but for us personally, it was a huge part. And we're trying to get this. Now, we sit down one night with Merc Fox, Captain Fox at the time, and retiring as Vice Admiral Fox.
Good dude.
Great dude. And now he's got, some scars from Desert Storm 1. And one of them being that the Strike Eagle comes out with a new tape load and right there at the beginning, and they start dropping like MERS off the wing or something like that. And so they get curtailed to doing anything. And so Merc says, I'm really reticent to try to allow you guys to put a tape load on the airplane because of the things that we saw in the past. And rightfully so.
Wait a minute. Okay, so you're saying that the Strike Eagle, when you say they're dropping MERS, you mean they're dropping the whole pylon?
So the whole pylon was coming off the airplane.
They're not. Now I get it. So
it wasn't a good thing. Yeah, it was a bad thing. I missed it.
So the bad thing was the thing that holds the bombs was coming off of the airplane, and the bombs, of course, weren't armoring or anything like that.
Big difference. Okay, thanks.
So it was a big deal for the Strike Eagle, and he carried that forward, and rightfully so. I mean, he's like, we're going to put a tape load in here that we're not supposed to really do this after Fallon. I'm nervous about it, and just like Boog said, man, I'm calling, I'm sending emails, I'm talking to people right and left that I shouldn't be. Chief of Staff for Air Forces, won't say who it was at the time, but it was an old friend of mine, and sending
nobody
him emails.
Will know. Nobody can figure it out.
Right. I'm showing him the Japital. I'm showing him everything that says we're going to get cut out of day one unless we do something. So back over to you, Boog.
Yeah, so I'll just throw out. So for us, this is Grumpy's earlier comment: $1 of investment to bring $1.50 of capability. We've got really good parts. We've got great availability. We've got 10 jets. Not all of them are on the roof. We had to fight to get more on the roof. And so this whole thing's coming together that we know, we're parochial, but we know that the F-14D is the most capable strike fighter on that deck once we get to 4. There's nothing that can touch it tactically. It can do everything better than anything else. Better than the Strike Eagle, better than any other Tomcat, better than the F-18C. And all of that pounding, I mean, it was full on, and it was frustration, it was pressure, and we're frustrated because we're like, okay, we got to hit all these things perfectly. So I'll just be very quickly, all of this work ended up happening. So VX4, went out and did a couple drops, good to go with D04. They fly the tapes out to us, and we take all their jets technically down for a day, load them up. I can't remember exactly how we did it, but we basically, maybe we did them sequentially. Everything worked great.
So you're on deployment.
We're at combat operations. I'm doing OSW.
And you did a tape load, a software tape load upgrade to the F-14 on deployment, and said launch into combat the next day.
Exactly. Now here's what happened.
If I remember that, if I was aware of that at the time, that escaped me. I do not remember that because that's significant. That's huge.
Crunch, where were you in early 2003?
I just got to VF-31, or I was in the RAG going to VF-31. Okay. Yeah.
All right. You went out there. Okay.
No, I was not in combat. I was sitting on the sideline, digging my heels, going, "Damn, why am I not out there?" And another story, but I was.
Significant risk, right? And this is. Everybody did the right.
I think you understate it when you say significant risk. That's huge risk. Wow.
I won't speak for Grumpy. Well, I could tell you what Grumpy will say, but I saw it. I was the XO. There is no risk. We have to do this. This was not like, well, on the other hand, we found out that if we put D04 in the mission computer and things didn't work out, we can put D03B right back in.
It's completely you can undo it.
That's good. Okay, that's good.
So it's a one day switchback.
Yeah. So we shut down Fly for a day. Of course, the VX4 comes out. I think it was
Fun Malay comes out from the weapons school.
Yeah. Drop it, and then so my XO, who we got out there earlier, Dave Burner, I think he and Donger, I think, actually did a fleet drop in our airplane, and they actually picked a piece of the water, dudded the bomb, didn't have it go high order. So these are GBU 31 V2 JDAMs, 2,000-pound JDAMs, and so that was it. We weren't, correct me if I'm wrong, Grumpy, that was the only, we only got flight clearance, off of those two stations, those two bombs. I don't think they cleared anything else. Is that right, Grumpy?
So they got all 4 stations underneath we were cleared for.
That's right. All 4 were cleared. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And we had done the software for both the 500 and 1,000 pounder too.
Yeah.
And that was a Tung Peterson thing that he pretty much wrote with the test community, pretty much wrote what the software was going to look like in the F-14D. So, I mean, he's my assistant OPSO. I mean, we're basically 2 OPSOs working at the same thing. And so we got a guy who basically designed the SMS, and he knew more about JDAM than any 10 people in a room. He was extremely bright, knew everything about it. And then, we had worked together plenty on getting D04 and what it was to the airplane. So, I mean, there were plenty of other experts in 31 also and 213, but, talking to the guys that pretty much wrote the requirements for the F-14D software. So we were comfortable. It was good to see Fun come out and give us a lot of background about the tape and all that other stuff. But, pretty much all the guys at VF2 were really familiar with what D04 was coming with.
And that's Mark Millay, call sign Fun.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, we know him.
Yeah.
He's been here.
Yeah, he did the F-14D systems.
So you guys have been patient. We haven't even gotten to bomb dropping yet, except we kind of got to to that point. But it's significant. The up to finally get this amazingly capable aircraft ready for the first strikes. It was a Herculean effort. We were 4 months into cruise probably by the time that all came together, and we knew exactly what we were doing. We had the luxury of flying there in OSW for 4 months, and we knew the territory and we knew the processes. So we were extremely ready to go. And then they started transitioning us to the night page. So with that, I'll throw it over to you guys.
Well, so it sounds like there's stuff going on, and bombs have not yet started flying in theater, but you've got the tape load. You're ready to go.
So we had not dropped. Grumpy, correct me if I'm wrong. We did not drop below 32 North yet until
no. We had done a lot of
TARPs.
on-call stuff leading up to that as far as OSW.
So OSW strikes where it was like a reactive type thing. You went and did that. But now all of a sudden we're like, okay, here's coming a mission. We've got a pre-planned strike. This is day 1 coming up. Here it is. What date are we talking about now?
So March 21st, but about a week and a half prior, they transition our entire ship to the night page. So we become a night carrier. So about a week and a half, 2 weeks prior, we just start shifting everything back and back. So now our body clocks, we wake up when it's dark, we become vampires.
Yeah. Now the thing to mention here is along the same timeline is there are 5 airplanes that come off of Kitty Hawk and go to Al Udeid. And they're doing that because they're going to support what is coined as Black SOF. And they're going to support this Black SOF effort for whatever they're going to do. And we're not too privy for that, but all of a sudden on comes John Boy Walton, Goat Boy Bates, and Puck Howe, and they start briefing us that we're now going to help support that at the same time. So
when you say 5 airplanes, you mean 5 Tomcats?
5 F-14As from the Kitty Hawk.
So is this Task Force 20
as a part of a det?
Is that Task Force 20 or is that something else?
TF-20, TF Tiger. That's exactly what that was.
Okay.
Yeah. And so Guido Guyman. So we have Weapons School, NSOC combined.
Okay, so those guys do that, but So what did you guys do in terms of OIF? I mean, I want to hear about the first day strike on OIF.
So I'll start with that.
That's a big story.
Yeah. Okay. So first strike is, let's just say middle of the night. I was flying with, so first of all, so what happens is there's the first strike, that's CAG Fox is leading it. I am part of an element. I'm a mission commander in an element underneath him. The second wave, I think Slim Whitson ran that second wave as a skipper of VF2. and then the skippers all kind of lined up. So from a personal perspective, for me on the very first night, and we're going to get into, I want Grumpy to actually talk about his missions in a second too, because what they did was pretty spectacular with the FAC-A work. So the very first night, there was a problem with fouling a tanker. So our section was actually a division of 2 Tomcat Ds and 2 F-18Cs. Ended up, for a variety of reasons, actually the first section to penetrate what was referred to as the super mes. So Baghdad had so many surface air missile sites that the rings actually were black around Baghdad. And there was a certain line where we knew that we were, quote unquote, on government time, and we had electronic attack protection as well as harm protection to have a chance of getting in there and delivering our ordnance. So for a variety of reasons, our warship was the first non-stealth aircraft to penetrate. The B-2s beat us over the target by about 3 minutes. They came all the way from the Midwest and went 180 out. We went about 3 minutes later. The challenge that we had was that the Calcum and TLAM strikes had happened just previously. We saw them on our goggles. So kind of think of a low overcast layer, and you could see the lights of Baghdad underneath. And then as the Calcum and the TLAM had come in, you would still see secondary explosions going off. And so that's all on goggles. As we're headed towards the target, the problem with the tanker situation, first of all, no one, when we're doing OSW and you're talking to the AWACS and you're getting this and you're getting an approval for a strike, that all goes out the window because, first of all, no one's talking to you. People are confused, I would say, in the command and control world. The Hawkeye would talk to us, but we just realized that we were completely on government time and we were all talking to each other with airplanes. There was no, in my opinion, there was no overarching command and control. It was just good people making really good decisions. And that was the first night. There was visually, you could imagine, because we hit them right after the TLAMs and the Calcums hit, my opinion is that the surface to air missile site commanders just let it loose with a lot of unguided SAMs. That's the best way to say it. So what we didn't know, obviously we have raw gear on our airplane where we could hear what was coming, but it was, let's just say it was pretty scary because there's launch after launch after launch. And so you have to analyze these coming up at the same time you're approaching your target. Thanks to the great work by the test community, our 2,000-pound JDAMs did exactly what they're supposed to do, and we struck a target. So our aircraft got R2 off. Our wingman F-18C did. It was interesting. The other Tomcat and the other F-18C had some issues, but they were able to strike their target. We struck our target, and as we were coming off target, and I'm using my hands to the right and accelerating, what's beautiful about having data link and a great radar is we could see the harm shooters that should have been there a lot earlier, launched the harms kind of nose to nose because they were going to do everything they could and protect our back door. But that's pretty, if you've not seen a harm launch on goggles, it's pretty spectacular, particularly when there's a wall of Hornets shooting them over the top of you. I'll say a couple good things. One, F-16 CJs were at the right place at the right time. Their tanker worked fine. They protected us. EA-6B protected us. We needed 2. We only had 1.
F-16 CJ is Wild Weasel.
Wild Weasel. Yeah, they did a great job. They harmed, and we were talking to our 1 Prowler, our 4 ship of CJs, and our harm shooters were coming, and they were pumping, man. They were coming as fast as they can. They were screaming. They got gas somewhere else. They covered our back door. Long story short, JDAM worked as advertised. Successful strike. It was pretty scary, to be honest with you. But then we realized in the heat of it that they're not guiding on us. Going aft on the canopy, nothing got super close to us. It was more reactive, but it was pretty spectacular fireworks.
So you guys, so how many days, weeks after this new tape load was put in the airplane did you guys fly this mission? Is this like 2 weeks later?
2 weeks, I'd say.
2 weeks. So in that 2 weeks, you had Burner go drop a bomb.
Burner did it right. So the test guys did it, and then Burner and I think it was Hugh.
Justin Sue.
Justin.
Yeah.
Justin.
Okay,
Yeah.
so those two guys did it. Nobody else in the squadron had an opportunity to work the systems, figure out how to download the waypoints into the bomb and look at the little shape on the PTID and say, there it is, we're in, and get the speed. There it is. I mean, did you guys have the simulators that you could put on the, what is it, Station 4 or wherever it was?
We
Go ahead,
didn't have the pucks to do that with.
Okay, because
we could simulate, like, had the shapes on there. We did not have.
So there used to be a thing where you could basically trick the airplane into thinking it had a JDAM, so you could go out and do practice reps and things. And you guys didn't have that. So you went into combat first time, basically going, all right, we went to the whiteboard. We got some markers. It's going to look like this. You do that. I do this. Let's go do it. Is that about the sum of it? And now we're going to shoot at you. So you got, I'm just trying to lay the groundwork for how amazing it is that you guys did that, pulled it off, and you hit your targets, right?
Yeah, we were hyper focused. So one of the things, the mission planning was, we had challenges where people would screw up. You know, no offense, but people would try to be smarter than they should have been, and like, oh no, So it's this whole we'll go into the JDAM weeds too much, but you have target of opportunity mode and you have pre JDAM, and people we had to figure this thing out, and we had guys from the weapons school to help us figure it out, but it was dicey. I do know one mission folks launched on, and the one guy that did the bricks, they refer to as bricks, is what you load up.
The software that you loaded up that had the mission planning in it, right?
Brick, and he did it wrong for everybody, and we were just devastated because it was like, well, we can't.
Well, I think we've all had that where you have that one guy who loads up all the bricks and the whole division is done. Like, oh, we're not mission capable now.
Yeah.
So it's not intentional.
Terrible.
It happens. We all make mistakes, and sometimes we assign it to that one guy, and then the TAMPS machine breaks, and you go, oh no. So I'm the tech rep who can fix the TAMPS machine.
I'm going to throw it at a Grumpy because realize we all did great work those first few days with JDAM, but then it's supporting the troops. And I just want to do a shout out. Grumpy had an amazing mission. He and go over to you, and it involved every you guys were FAC A, so Grumpy's a FAC A.
So Grumpy, is this where TF-30 comes in, or TF-20? I mean, I'm sorry, TF-20.
So, yeah, I mean, there's the TF-20 missions that so A Day is shock and awe day. So that's air day when shock and awe happens. So the day prior,
did they call it shock and awe in 2003? Because I remember they called it shock and awe back in 1991.
That was the big nomenclature, shock and awe day. A Day was shock and awe. That was what it was across every news organization was called shock and awe. So
yeah, okay.
Anyways, just prior to A Day, we start working with the TF-20 guys, and we go out to H3. It's an 8.5-hour mission, and they're going after WMD stuff that's going to Syria. And so it's the guys off the Kitty Hawk that are deaded out of Al Udeid. It's us at VF2, myself and John Boy Walton with him in my back seat, and then there's Spotty Oman and Tung Peterson in the other one, and we go out to H3. And we're protecting the Black Soft guys that are going in there. That's 3rd Ranger Battalion, the Dev GRU, and 160th Night Stalkers. We're supporting them as they're inserting guys in, and then we're providing cover. They're doing a lot of the FAC work from the ground, and we're there as a backup to back them up. The big thing was the learning point was Mogadishu, with everybody coming in after where they knew where this Black Soft was, and what they wanted was us to keep that from coming in. And so when we went out to H3, they're inserting guys different ways, and our job is to fly over the top and provide protection. And we're in dropping on targets that they're calling us in on. And it was funny because one day, or one part of the mission, there's a car coming down the road, and they're like, somebody says, hey, there's a car coming down the road. And the guy's like, well, take it out. And of course you have, no less than 6 airplanes overhead. We're all blacked out so nobody can see us. And everybody starts going for this one car driving down the road. And so there's guys rolling in, dropping LGBs. There's guys strafing on this thing. So Tongue and Spidey put this 500-pounder, and of course he's traveling on the road really fast, and it hits just short. And so it hits just short, and all of a sudden this car just starts kind of slowing and coasting off to the side. And then 4 guys come running out of the car, kind of staggering back and forth. I won't tell you what happened after that, but that was just kind of a holy cow moment. They did not want anybody coming in to the AOR during that time frame, and it was interesting to be blacked out with a bunch of airplanes all circling overhead, swirling, trying to protect.
And all Tomcats.
What's that? There are 4 Tomcats and 4 Strike Eagles there. The Strike Eagles are the bomb truck, and the Tomcats are bomb trucks and also FAC-As to back them up cool. when they're doing that.
Nice.
So it is a lot of work that had been coordinated ahead of time, and we'll talk about the Lake Tharthar mission that we did to try to get Saddam and his sons. We were also trying to get Spiker because we thought he was in there too, plus some WMD when we did the Lake Tharthar mission a couple of days after that. But I mean, that was one night. That was the closest I came from midair. We're coming off a tanker, all blacked out at night, crossing over. And I have to remember that when we were working with TF-20, they stopped all of the operations, and everything was there to support TF-20 and what they were doing. All of Iraq stopped. There was nothing going on but the support for those guys. So we're coming. We go get gas in Saudi. We turn around and we're coming back into Iraq. And, of course, there's a P3 out there supporting the operation. Well, I didn't see him. He didn't see me. And the only thing I saw going by was a little peephole and some guy looking out it. And I was like, and that was one of those oh my god moments, that you get.
So you big sky, big sky, little airplane theory. Holy cow! Wow, yeah. Bio, I just talked over you. Sorry, go ahead.
You got to tell us about Lake Tharthar because, like Crunch, you've seen the comments. Whenever they say they're going to come back to that, they never do.
I don't have a pen right now. Otherwise, it'd be like, we need to come back to that. And then the other thing
tell
is
us about that mission.
Yeah, that's right. We got to talk about all that.
So day 2, so our 2 days after A Day, so shock and awe day plus 2 days. There is thought that Saddam and his 2 sons are at this palace at the southeast end of Lake Tharthar. And also in that palace, just on the grounds, there is a 7-story underground storage facility that they believe WMD is either in there, and or there's word that Captain Spiker is there, and we're going to be able to go get him. And so there's a lot riding on this mission. And so the mission begins, and we're flying over the top of these guys at about 30,000 feet, and they're going in with Little Birds, which is a very small helicopter, DAPS, which is
OH-6, right?
Yeah, an OH-6. And then they have DAPS that are H-60 gunships, just totally loaded with everything. And then they have what we call the clown cars, which the H-47s are coming. The Chinooks are coming in, and they're going to deliver, all these guys. And so we're going over a dam, and and guys are picking things off right and left to make sure nobody knows that these guys are coming. Now, south of Lake Tharthar Palace is where the SSO lives, and that's the special guard for Saddam and his sons. And so they're south about 2 clicks. And there's a big concern that those guys are going to come in while we're trying to do this operation. So that was a big thing that we were there for, was try to keep people coming from the outside. And what they had done is they had drawn a couple of circles around Lake Tharthar Palace, and then out a little ways and out a little further. And then the DevGru 3rd Ranger and 160th would take care of the inner, we'll call it the blue circle. And then the gold circle was where the DAPS were supposed to work. And then white was where the Strike Eagles and Tomcats were supposed to work. And so they go up the west side of Lake Tharthar and then start coming back down the south end of Lake Tharthar around the corner, kind of past the SSO. And the skies just start lighting up on those poor guys. And so we're starting to try to pick stuff off to keep it. It's all unaimed fire. But this is a lot. The sky just starts lighting up on those guys. And there's, I won't get into all the support that was going on, but just rest assured that everything the U.S. had was supporting this mission. And so we're going in there, and they go in and they drop the guys off, and they go into the palace. They go into this, what is a bunker complex, 7 stories down, that they'd actually practiced this out in the Nellis range like 4 times. And because of the super meds, on the 4th time, the best they could do was 50% survivability of all the air breathers, and everybody else was. So it was.
They all said they'd still go.
Oh yeah, and everybody said we're still going because we're going to do this, and it was much less than what it was meant to be. But when you sit down in a brief and they say 50% of you aren't coming back, you get a lot of kind of stares in the face of I don't want to go kind of thing, and we had a little bit of that. But it was great. We're knife in the teeth. We're going forward on this, and so anyways, the op goes pretty well. I will say the H-47, the Chinook, was just shot the snot, although we didn't lose anybody. And there was nothing that we really got out of that mission other than some intel. We didn't get Saddam. We didn't get any WMD. And unfortunately, we didn't find Spiker either. But that was a high intensity. Once again, the entire place shut down to support Task Force 20 and what they were trying to do. And that was quite an honor to be able to do that. And
that is amazing. It's an amazing mission. And Crunch, once again, this is a theme that comes out on a couple of our interviews, just the missions that we're talking about, the planning and everything else. It's not just operator skill and experience, but it's just the planning and missions. And Grumpy, that was a perfect example of one. But also the fact that the Tomcat was a key player. I mean, that's like,
yeah. I mean, they asked us to participate because of the capability it brought to the table and the people that were working it, early on, Guido and the guys at NSOC and Top Gun and all those guys that had been working that stuff in the background, because there had been quite a bit of handshaking going on well before that with the Special Forces in Fallon, as you guys probably well know. And
that's good. That's good. Yeah.
Kind of built from there.
Established relationships and
Yeah. So it was a fantastic, and then we got one more. We were doing a softening mission for Baghdad International, which was known as Saddam International. They were going to, and they decided not to, they were going to insert a full brigade into Saddam International or Baghdad International Airport right in the middle of all this. And it was 45 C-130s and C-17s in this huge drop-down profile, come in screaming, and then land, and then they were going to put a 1-star with a brigade right in the middle of Baghdad. That was the future plan. They didn't have to because they were going so fast coming up the east and west side. They didn't have to. But that was the next mission we were going to do, and that was another big eye-opener considering, what the super mez was supposed to be. It didn't end up being that.
I mean, with that many people, they would have needed an exchange, yeah, I'm kidding.
But a golf course.
Of course, I don't know if there was one there, but somebody needed to come in with a brigade of just bulldozers to put up the golf course.
That's right. Okay, damn, you guys are out here just doing this just day after day, mission after mission.
I'll throw out a couple of stats. So there was a really good article that came out in spring. I've got it here in front of me, the Tailhook magazine. Spring 2005 edition. And so they got the official stats. So during 28 days of OIF, VF2, just our squadron, completed 195 combat sorties, 887 hours. We had 10 aircraft. We dropped 221 LGBs. 217 of those were GBU-12s and 4 GBU-16s. We dropped 61 JDAMs, GBU-31s. And we expended 1,700 rounds of 20 Mike. And I know Torso was one. Grumpy, were you also strafing?
Oh, yeah. I had all kinds of fun strafing.
Yeah, so strafing as well. And
that's 10 bombs a day between JDAMs and
yeah, we dropped, I don't remember, I hate saying stuff like this, but we dropped more bombs than anybody had ever done. And, I think it had done since then in one squadron and one deployment since, pre-Vietnam. And we dropped a lot of ordnance. And I probably have that wrong, but it was full on. I'll also throw a couple things, talking about the bravery, I'll talk about other people. Those missions, those FAC-A missions where we weren't sure if they were coming back, that's legit. It was pretty, I was in the briefs. You had to get, cleared to see that. But pretty ballsy stuff there from those guys. My pilot Webster Frankenberg, I didn't mention him earlier. I flew with him. I flew with Grumpy a lot before the deployment. Webster was my primary pilot. He was phenomenal. And of course, the skipper Slim, CAG, DCAG. So great folks. I also was just going to say that we supported ground. So those of us that were not doing, the Lake Tharthar and stuff after the initial JDAM drops, we dropped a lot of, as you heard, LGBs. We were supporting the forces all the way up to Baghdad, and when we got to Baghdad, so we were talking to guys. We were doing a lot of SCAR missions, a lot of on-call.
SCAR was. We've talked about that. What's SCAR again?
So
Self-contained armed reconnaissance, I think it is.
Oh, yeah, I think so. Yeah, self-contained armed reconnaissance. So think of it as not pure CAS per se, but we were supporting troops in vicinity. So special ops guys see stuff they'd call us on targets, and Grumpy had a lot of fun. I think Webster and I found a really big airplane that he couldn't see, the guy on the ground couldn't see, and so he was trying to talk us with the LGB onto some gun positions, and so it's around an airport, and it's hard, right, on the FLIR, trying to figure out orientation, somebody you've never worked with before, blah blah blah. It's confusing. So I say, in relation to the large aircraft on the apron, how many using that's one unit of measure, how many units of measure? And he basically says, what large aircraft on the apron? I go, it's like a 730. It wasn't a 737, but it was, pretty big transport. And he's like, stand by, comes back and he goes, take out that aircraft. And so I
take out that aircraft.
Out that.
Now that's
and
you close control right there.
Measure?
Yes. So say again. Sorry.
You were just using it as a reference point. And
I could see it. He couldn't see it from his position. He repositions, and then I turn the tape on and say that again. And he goes, take out that aircraft. So we got it on tape. That's the typical aviator, like before I pull up a commercial airliner. I want to
CYA.
So the funny story is so I still remember showing Grumpy that tape, and Grumpy's a very competitive guy, as we all are, and he goes, awesome. I think, Grumpy, a week later, you guys took out an airplane that was slightly bigger. Remember that?
Did you like, look at this? We're comparing it to the ground equipment. This one's bigger.
Grumpy, I still remember that. You guys found one that was slightly bigger. I was like, there we go, XO. We got you. Got one big.
Yeah, that was an Antonov AN-120. So it was an enormous airplane. And
that is a big airplane.
Bob in the back seat, we had the ability to turn off the symbology for the lantern. So you had all the stuff, lat longs and the mass curve and the SAI dot and the North Q and all that other stuff. But you hit a little button and it took all that away so you could see a nice clean picture. So Gob's like, oh yeah, I'm going to have this one. There's not going to be anything in the way. So he turns off the symbology over the top of it. And I kind of get a little bit nervous, and no kidding, the GBU-12 goes right through the center spar of the thing. It was pretty spectacular.
Yeah. I still remember showing this tape going like, ours is bigger. And it was like, well, I get it.
Way to go.
Hey, I got two dumb questions. Crunch, you going to remember yours, or go ahead? I wrote mine down.
No, I was going to ask it for you.
Oh, no,
go for it.
I got two dumb questions, and you guys can decide, take it real time. One, was there, especially early on, was there any consideration for the air threat? And two, did you ever attain a level of comfort or even complacency flying these combat missions day after day? So the first one is the air threat, Iraqi air threat. And by 2003, were they there? Did you guys, were you?
OSW, they were flying around up north.
I mean, right. I remember OSW and all that. So when OIF starts off, did they launch against you? Or?
Yeah, okay. No, they stopped. Grumpy, over to you. You agree?
Yeah, there was absolutely no air activity. There was a few helos running around, probably doing logistic runs.
Were you just carrying a Sidewinder or a Sparrow and a Sidewinder?
Boog's first night, they carry two Sidewinders and a Phoenix with the bombs. So we had a Phoenix on board.
Because you can put the Phoenix on the wing station and carry the...
Yeah, on the left, and then FLIR on the right. So there's one. And then after that day, we just went down to two Sidewinders, and that was it.
All right. Cool.
There's another really cool mission that went on that I want to talk about. We had set guys out on a TARPS mission, right? So if you look in the book, tarps, you're allowed to carry a couple of dumb bombs in the front. So we sent we sent a section of our JOs out, and they're doing a tarps run, try to get good information. And then at the end of that, there is a Brit FAC that wants to bring them in because he knows that they're on the ATO with some weapons. So we have two JO crews. Crack Matheson is with Tammy Faye Baker, and then Justin Sue is with, I don't remember who he was with, but anyways, Killer Kalari. And so those guys come in over the top. It's Saddam Hussein's personal ship. And
in the port of Basra.
I've heard about this story, yes.
This is his personal ship. And they had a S3 come in, had an F-18 come in, and they weren't able to hit it. And then they brought in an S3, and he shot an LMAV. I think it was an LMAV. And they hit it, and it was still standing, and they wanted that thing to go down. So, no kidding, our guys with 2 Mark 82s apiece on the aircraft with a tarps pod on the back end of it roll in on Saddam's ship and sink it, and they hit exactly what they aimed at. That airplane was an amazing bomber.
Okay, so these were unguided Mark 82s, dumb
totally unguided Mark 82s, and these guys put it right down the chute, right exactly where two of them picked the front, two of them picked the back, and they sunk that thing with 4 Mark 82s. It was awesome. I mean, it was one of those, hey, why don't we, just because we can, why don't we put a couple of dumb bombs on there? I mean, they're never going to drop, but we'll see. And of course, it was great to see those guys go out there and do it right.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
Okay.
Other missions, they'd send us up to kill box and just go, right? And go up to a kill box and check in. And so your complacency question, there was never complacency. Like every mission was different, or you would get refragged. You would go up and think you're going to do to Grumpy's point. These guys did the tarps mission. When they're taking pictures, oh no, you're going to now bomb Saddam's yacht. I mean, there was never an ounce of complacency, at least from my mindset. It was like full on every time.
How about the Iraqi surface air threat? Were they continuing to shoot? I mean, you guys were in combat, you said, for 28 days.
So think of it as we're supporting the troops up. Baghdad falls. I'm going to make this up, April 16th, something like that, right? At that point, no more concern of surface air threat. We were concerned about going down low with, whenever we were troops in contact, absolutely. Yeah. But it was a calculated risk. We had a hard deck of 10, but we all decided if there's troops in contact, we're coming down, right? Grump is the right way to say it. I mean, if there's guys that need,
absolutely.
We're coming.
Absolutely. We definitely said, hey, if you're going below 10,000 feet, you better be doing business because there's no trolling. Although one of the best missions I had there, we did a show of force, and it was actually fun. Probably one of the funnest things I got to do while I was there, surprisingly.
Show of force is basically a low-level flyby to show everybody that you're there, scare them away.
Yeah, there was a bunch of people that were raiding the ammunition bunkers at one of the airfields. And the Army guy, his idea, the FAC's idea, was to drop a bomb somewhat close by all these civilians and scare them away. And I'm like, don't really want to do that. And so how about a flyby? So, we load the old Tomcat up, and there probably are 50, 75 cars and a ton of people and all these things, trying to not just ammunition, but other food and everything else in this. And so we go ripping by just, we're not casting much of a shadow. Let's just put it that way. And we were supersonic when we went by, and it was spectacular, except immediately coming off the flyby right in front of me was a Marine Corps helicopter that we had to go underneath to get around. Holy bejesus out of me. And, but just turn around and seeing all these people in car accidents trying to get out of the base and running all over the place like a bunch of little ants and everything like that. It was funny. We didn't hopefully hurt anybody, but it was pretty spectacular. It was fun.
I'm just imagining being the helicopter pilot as a Tomcat goes supersonic underneath me.
Yeah, we were a little worried about. I hope they're okay, but we didn't hear anything.
I'd be more concerned about him than anybody on the ground. I'd be like,
yeah, it was kind of just one of those "oh my god" moments.
yeah. Well, let's try not to hit him and then hope for the best.
Yeah.
Golly. So how long were you guys in theater there? How long were you guys in combat ops?
Well, I'd say
is that 2 months, 3 months?
Yeah,
No,
two months max. So it started in late March, and Baghdad fell. I think it was around April 16th, and we were.
Hey,
oh wow!
The Tailhook article said 28 days, right?
Yeah, 28 days.
Wow, I didn't. I'd forgotten it was that fast.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, basically they call it like 100-hour war.
Yeah, I remember it being fast, but I just don't remember it being less than a month. Holy cow!
It went super fast, and even though it was like 3 weeks, we did everything. I mean, Gob and I got to do an RMC mission for some helos that are down. We're cast support. We're, doing JDAM. The only thing we didn't do was air-to-air.
What's RMC again?
Rescue Mission Commander. So we got to go, take care of a helo that had gone down, and we had got around to be able to get those guys picked up. So that was fun.
That's cool, man.
Hey, I got to do one plug for the maintenance guys. So the jets were great, right?
Thank you.
I'm good at that. Yeah. The jets were, everything was just, people were just working their asses off, right? It was incredible availability. I don't think I ever missed a sortie. I can't remember what our sortie completion rate was, but it was
98. We had a 98% sortie completion rate, and if you were to go back and it beat everybody else, it beat all the Hornets, it beat everybody on the boat, 98. And the Tomcat is not easy to work on. And it was a big thanks to not only Fitwing and then Slim and Boog to recruit these guys, but they were recruiting within themselves all the good people. And I know the other Tomcat squadrons enjoyed similar success, but you have to be a significant artisan to know how to work on the airplane. And we had full FMC jets, not like just things that just it kind of worked and all. We're talking hard up airplanes every night, every day. We were only allowed 6 airplanes on the roof, where the Hornets were allowed 9 to 10, and we only had 10 airplanes. And they said, "Oh, we'll have 2 other airplanes on the number 4 elevator waiting. And so when you guys leave, then we'll bring those others up." Well, that doesn't always end up happening. And so we had to go 6 for 6 every night, I don't know, just throughout the night. We had to go 6 for 6. Yeah, we were able to bring a onesie twosie up, but that's how well done the maintenance was while we were there.
And I'm sure your troops were just fired up when you guys got back, when you were launching. I'm sure they were just proud as hell to be there and part of the war effort.
So I'll just throw out. So Connie, great ship. Fozzie Miller ended up retiring as a 3-star, awesome skipper. I did take on the 6 as the XO, but took it on because I wanted to protect my skipper, and I took it on. And I called up to the bridge to have a one-way conversation, but I was fighting hard to get more than 6 on the roof. We never did it. I felt that was a shame. I felt that we had the ability to have at least eight up there, with 2 in the hangar bay. We could have done more work, and it's not for us. We're in combat, we're getting our sorties, we're all that stuff. For me, it was about, I don't want to say winning the war, because that wasn't really ever in question after a couple of days, but think of all that work and effort to get that carrier on the pointy edge, and we have 4 great assets down in the hangar bay. How frustrating that is. And so for me, it was like an inefficiency. It's like, if I'm running a business today, it's like, hey, let's be efficient. What did it take to get all of that in place, and why are we not maximizing that carrier capability? I think a lot of it came out of the KAOC. There's Mongo just pawned in Game of Life, to use a reference from a movie, but it was frustrating for us, and I
think
took
that's the first Blazing Saddles quote we've had in the entire run of the F-14.
Yeah, as it should be.
Tried, but I felt like it was a battle worth taking on, and Fozzie was right and I was wrong, but I gave it a shot, and it was kind of fun getting called to the bridge and told start coloring keep flying.
Fozzie and I were in the same class at Pensacola.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
He is a good guy.
He did the right thing. I did the right thing. Everybody's happy. We moved on.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So what are you guys doing now? Boog, what are you up to?
So I'm still heavily involved in naval aviation. Interesting enough, Hey Joe Parsons actually is one of my part-time employees, which is pretty cool.
He's one of your what?
Part-time employees. So I run a company called Co-Aspire. We been doing it full-time since 2015. We just won a NavAir contract to add a GPS to a laser-guided training round. So we're hopefully in the near future, we'll have, go back to those JDAM stories we just talked about, give warfighters more training, end-to-end training with GPS weapons at a fraction of the cost of the real ones. Heavily involved with mission planning for naval aviation and a bunch of classified work. We got eight pilots supporting Boeing. I've got 6 folks supporting Lockheed Martin. The Boeing pilots are flying QF-16s for their drone program, and they're part-time W-2s for Co-Aspire. They're Air National Guard pilots. So got 33 folks. I've grown it. Look at employee number 1. Love it every day, but I'm still, let's just say, actively involved in naval aviation. I'm one of these guys that never kind of took the uniform off. So that's what we're doing here.
Awesome. That sounds incredibly productive.
Yeah.
I see you on LinkedIn all the time. I'm always proud to think I know that guy.
No, it's good. It's exciting. It's just.
Oh yeah, you're doing a lot of great stuff, man.
Trying to do good stuff. I'm one of these contractors. They always say when we were all active duty, it's like contractors feel like they're part of the fight, and I was like laughing, like they're not part of the fight, But that's what we try, right? So
yeah. It's what you think when you're young, and then you get on the other side, and you're like, actually, I am part of the fight. Yeah, that's right. Grumpy. So I think you and I know what you're doing. Tell everybody else what you're doing.
So when I left in 2017, the first thing I did was, like Boog, try to pay back a little bit to the naval aviation. So I was fortunate enough to get picked up by the simulator instructors over in Oceana. So I was a F-18 simulator instructor. And then just as I was getting on there, I got picked up by Southwest. And then after that, I was still working the simulators and doing Southwest. And then a fantastic company called ATAC, Mother Hubbard running ATAC. So the F-18 guy was fantastic, and a great group of guys over at ATAC. I got to fly with them for a little bit, and then I had an opportunity to join UPS on the management side of the house and still get to fly and do what,
So what were you flying at ATAC?
I flew the Hawker Hunter, and they had the Kafir, and now they have the F1.
Is the Hunter a sweet airplane? I mean, it's like a classic, I know, but
I'm
be
not.
careful. We don't want to piss off all of our Brit fans that are watching. So.
No. So late 50s airplane. It has late 50s technology, single engine airplane, somewhat
How does
tactical.
it fly?
Pardon me?
How does it fly?
It is. I'm not, super experienced in a lot of airplanes. It's the one airplane that I've flown in my life that I had to really pay attention.
Oh, interesting.
I really had to pay attention to fuel was first and foremost, and then keeping an eye on hydraulics and everything. Like the fuel probably being the biggest one. And the only airplane I ever flown that when you turn in, make an angle bank and you start pulling G's, you actually have to take the stick and move it forward to keep it from over stressing, because it does a little tuck when you're kind of pulling an airplane. So you got to be really careful of that. But fantastic airplane when it comes to doing the job that ATAC does, and that's supporting the fleet.
Okay.
They do, red air, but plus then they go fly against the fleet itself during the workup cycle and stuff. So it was great. And then the opportunity I had at UPS doing the management side, unfortunately precluded me from continuing with ATAC, but what a great organization they are.
Yeah, that's cool.
Good stuff. Well, so this story arc that we've had over this discussion, the last hour and a half, has been incredible. We've had some great stories. I'm sure there are some things that we should have asked you about. Is there anything that you can think of right now that we did not ask you about that you think we should have talked about? Nothing at all.
Okay, so Boog, tell us where you got your call sign, because We got people around the world, they don't know who Boog is.
Yeah. Yeah. So my first went right into the fleet, right on cruise. I was DJ. And then we came off a cruise and the
And that was
intramural.
your first call sign, DJ?
Yeah, it was DJ. DJ for the fire entire first deployment. We come off of deployment and it's intramural softball season at Oceana, and I hit one over the fence. I was a decent softball player, and I kind of looked like a baseball player from the Baltimore Orioles named Boog Powell. And so I hit another home run, and they're basically like, "It's freaking Boog Powell, it's Boog," and I, of course, I go, I hate that, whatever, and
Done.
Okay, I looked up Boog Powell after I met you, and I go, damn, that does look like it. So I see the relationship. So
yeah, that was it. And I'll make it very short. When so then I go from Oceana to Miramar, and there was another Boog Powell that was a RAG instructor. He was a reservist, so he didn't like the fact that in the squadron in VF-124 there were two instructors with call sign Boog. So because I had not been over the line, the equator, I was a slimy polywog, and as an Oceana guy showing up in Miramar, all my fellow instructors were trusty shellbacks, which means they've been over. So he tried to change it to WOG, and it stuck around a little while at 124, and finally, unfortunately, I know it's horrible when I say this, but he died in a Tomcat accident last spin, and so there were two Boogs, and then there was one, and I actually was mowing my lawn the day after he died at Miramar, and I had a guy stop the car and went, "Holy shit, I thought you died yesterday." And it's like, yeah, I appreciate it, but no, it was the other Boog. But
the other,
wow.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's a
great guy. He was a reservist at that. He was a Sal.
Very sad. That is shit. But
Yeah,
it happened,
okay.
man. Grumpy. Were you always grumpy?
I have always been grumpy. I started out in the training command. Guy by the name of Captain Giant Snyder. Giant was his call sign because he got really big at the club. And he was a little short dude. Great guy, but he was a little short guy. And when he get to the club, he got really big. So hence the Giant call sign. Super guy. And he one day we're out bombing in the A4, and at the end of that you strafe, and so I rolled into strafe, and the A4 invariably it just had a single gun. It wasn't a Gatling gun, so it was a single gun, and it would go chunk 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 chunk. Well, it was the first time I ever did it, and it went chunk and jammed, and I didn't know that. I'm like, what's going on? And then I see the bullet in front of me spray the sand in front of me, hit it, and I at that point in time noticed that we were rapidly going to hit the ground. Snatched on a pole, 7.2 Gs, overstressed the airplane, and the instructor in the back seat, was a great guy. And, another one of those, oh my God moments. And went back to the ready room, doing the debrief, sat in the corner, sucking my thumb, mad as heck at myself. And Giant, along with a few other things, called me a grumpy with a bad attitude. So we had to cut out all the other stuff with a bad attitude. And then as I went through my career, I was kind of always known as a guy that, in the cockpit, I didn't put up with much buffoonery from other people. So I get a little animated. So the name just kind of never went away.
That's good.
I remember, the guys you guys had for the demo. Ponch Rivera was in my back seat, and his first ride at VF2, he's with me doing FCLPs, and we're about halfway through FCLPs. And Ponch, in his own way, comes up on the radio and goes, "Why do they call you Grumpy?" I'm like, yeah, I think that pretty much explains. Because if you're not complaining as an aviator, you're not happy. So, anyways, that's where that came from.
Oh, that's awesome.
I know we're going to wrap it up. One thing I was going to think of, and I didn't say it. So there were incredibly talented pilots, flew the F-14D. Grumpy, clearly top 5. I got to see most of them, and he, top hook repeatedly, top everything, and just not only knew that airplane, but a professional aviator. He would teach ACM to the if I'd be flying with a young guy in my front seat, Grumpy was just a phenomenal teacher of ACM and could actually was talking on the radios, which is kind of rare, telling guys when they were making mistakes during 1v1 while he's under G. Is just an extremely talented fighter pilot, and I just wanted to get that out there.
Thanks, Boog. That's very
really
nice, and that's a very good. That specific observation. That's
really spectacular, talented individual.
It just takes, he asked for, nice clean bills. It wasn't, just a check like that. Clean bills for that level.
Make them
right back at him for, obviously given, the one thing we didn't talk about was how we did crew pairing and then how we were able to work in the squadron. Boog and Slim both gave their department heads the space and breadth to do their thing. And, stuff coming up like, hey, I have a great idea. The JOs are all going to fly with themselves, and then the department heads and COs and XOs are going to fly with each other. And so, we're going into combat, and who's going to allow that to happen? So, Boog and Slim allowing us the room and breadth to make our own mistakes and do our own thing. And, out of all that, it was, getting to learn leadership through him and people like Slammer and stuff like that. You just try to emulate those people as best you can. And you just hope that you can live up to that. So, those are very kind words, but probably the biggest thing from that is I just wanted to make sure everybody around me was, if they could be better than me, that's what it was all about. And naval aviation has gone to such great lengths to when you walk in to a ready room and you go into the debrief, you check your attitude at the door and you put everything out there. The civilian world has no idea. And I know that there's plenty of people trying to teach that, but the guys who were guarded and didn't want to display their mistakes, which, I was the first guy to the board and said, I made this mistake. I did this wrong. I did that wrong. And you opening yourself up to criticism and then making yourself better for the next flight was everything that I was taught and then tried to teach everybody else. It's like, guys, check your attitude at the door, come in, and let's make ourselves better as a team.
And Brad Elward identifies that as something that came about in the late 60s as naval aviation transitioned from the days when you had a few guys who were ass kickers and they were just like, I'm going to kick your ass because you're a new guy. And then by the late 60s, they realized we got to start teaching the young guys instead of just beating up on them. So, but that is a very good observation about naval aviation, and I perceived it from when I started flying in joined the fleet in '81. So, cool.
Yeah,
well,
very much enjoyed that.
We could go for another 2 hours probably, but you guys have covered more than I expected to get out of this. Crunch and I always have our notes and stuff, and you guys covered the background information that we started with was just incredible, very insightful, a lot of who's who of naval aviation, but also not only the people, but, like you just were talking about, the principles, the commitment, et cetera. So Grumpy and Boog, thanks to both you guys for taking the time to prepare and spend the afternoon with us on the F-14 Tomcat. Crunch, I'll give you the last word this time.
Well, thanks, Bio. I appreciate it. And I would just like to say, Boog and Grumpy, thank you both. Gentlemen, this has been an amazing experience. We'd love having you guys on board. Yeah, I think the audience is going to love the stories. And thanks for joining us. So you guys get the last word.
Hey, appreciate it. I loved every day in naval aviation. Best community, best people. And, we didn't list all the names of the people we flew with in VF2, but they know who they are and they're phenomenal. And, Slim and the department heads and the JOs. And then, of course, the maintenance department was phenomenal. So I just want to throw out to them again. We don't talk a lot about them. We talk about ourselves, but the folks around us made it all happen.
Well, that's a great point.
Fantastic opportunity. And I really thank you guys for, putting the Tomcast together. It's great. And then to get to see the names and the faces of the people who made it all happen. The airplane was a fantastic airplane, but it wouldn't have been nearly the legend it was if it wasn't for the people that were flying it.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate you everybody else appreciates you as well. And thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the F-14 Tomcast.
Hey, we thought it would be fun to do an audience survey. We want to hear who were your favorite guests, what was your favorite episode, all sorts of great information like that.
The survey link will be posted on Fighter Pilot Podcast Facebook page and also in the episode descriptions. And most important, you've got until August 11th, 2022 to participate in this survey.
So tell us what you think. We can't wait to hear from you.
You've been listening to the F-14 Tomcast, part of the Air Combat Experience, brought to you by BVR Productions. Got a question for the show? Send an email to questions@f14tomcast.com or leave a message on our listener line at 877 Mach 101 extension 3. That's 877-622-4101 extension 3. For updates on this podcast and our other military aviation themed shows, visit bvrpro.com and follow the Air Combat Experience on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Thanks for listening.